They may have to. It says she's willing. Okay, I have no motion.
This is just to kind of speed up a little, it's the rest of the grants.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And basically, where we are, oh, sure, in all of that. If,
So this does not include the
No.
east wall and the north wall.
no, no,
That work is complete though,
oh, yeah,
but, so.
we've already filed, a semi-final report. I'm waiting for a response from the state so we can get our other 10%.
Do you recall, were we nominally within budget, or are there any budget concerns that we need to change funding?
No, it's pretty close to what was originally estimated on the north wall.
Look forward to final report on that, when we end up there. I guess we'll do oldest to newest, how about that? So cupola reconstruction grant. That was, bid out, that's what we call it, high bid.
It was bid, if you recall, they talked about 70,000 and 80,000 and that sort of thing. So we asked, Ralph Brothers to sharpen their pencil. And, we changed the grant, or we changed the job somewhat. It doesn't involve as much replacement of, some of the wood up there. This is gonna be more repairs, but, it still will cover the copper roof on that cupola. And to make sure that it's secure and, repainted and that sort of thing. So we're looking at 28,000 on that. And I'm waiting for the contract to sign. It's supposed to be here. It's supposed to be here today. And again, Bill said that they can finish that, before the snow flies. So we will be going ahead with that.
What does that cupola do?
Nothing. It's totally decorative, but I was warned that it was in rough shape a few years ago. So we had a second look at it and said, we better do the repairs, especially on that roof part. And, any of the wood that's in really bad shape, and then, repair some of it and make sure that it's stable again.
The contract is sent out to the contractor.
Mm-hmm.
The contract is sent to the contractor, but it's not yet been signed by the contractor.
Right, we haven't signed the actual contract. But it's agreed upon.
And have they given any indication when they might start the work?
Should be starting any minute now. I mean, as soon as we sign that contract, it's gotta be done before the snow flies. The only hitch on the whole thing is, it requires that copper roof, which maybe take us, I've been warned it's gonna take them time to get that.
I'm confused by our share versus our,
Where are you?
under 2020, the difference between the, yeah.
Well, what I gave you was original grant numbers, but we don't always get what we asked for. So in the revision, the award was scheduled for $21,476. What we got was $17,540.
So now we owe this much more.
So our share goes up.
And is it, does the word so far, is there any likelihood that that will change?
What's that?
Is there any likelihood that the award so far amount will change?
Well, yeah, and we don't, those have changed. As you'll remember, we'll send out an announcement that, we got more funds for a particular grant. What that means is that some libraries throughout the state are returning back money that they can't use. And so that money comes back to Upper Hudson and gets redistributed. In this grant, it's a 2020 grant, it's old now, it's not likely to change.
I guess the one part that had me in, issue question that Marie asked about the shares, thank you for clarifying that, was the, comment that the copper, and they don't know when they're gonna get the copper. They don't have the copper lined up now, and they.
Well, told me he ordered it back a couple of weeks ago when I talked to him. So hopefully that'll work.
I know at one point there were supply chain issues with copper as well. So,
Yeah.
interesting to hear what gets told.
Tell him to go melt down a bunch of pennies.
I hear they're going begging for free. It's not legal tender anymore. It may not be that the work gets done this fall. That just makes sense. Head out.
Well, I'm hanging it over his head as best I can.
Yeah, thank you. Any updates on the floor and ceiling reconstruction here in this building?
Funny you should ask. Yeah, the floor and the ceiling, we did get full funding. But we kept waiting and waiting and waiting for the state to actually mail the first check. I got it today.
Oh.
It's been like 2 years or something, but, they're gonna probably push those deadlines ahead on that. Tentatively, the 2-year deadline is this June. But, 2 years deadlines are the official deadlines, and then we can always get a 1-year extension on those. They're probably gonna extend that even after that because it took so long to get approval on this.
No, I'm sorry, the floor and the ceiling in the reading room, is that there, what floor and ceiling are we?
The ceiling in the reading room,
Okay.
yeah, that's that where the vents are,
Yes,
and, the floor in the kitchen,
okay.
downstairs, basement.
And how much did you receive?
What's that?
Do you know how much the check was that you received?
64,000, which is supposed to be 90%. They send you 90, and then after you do your final report, they send you the other 10.
Okay.
And, so that means the next step would then be to bid this work officially?
We can bid that, yeah.
Great.
I don't like to bid those until I have their first check.
Okay, this is pretty.
That's what I was waiting for, so yeah, we'll do that.
And, Kathy's helping us with that?
Yeah, I'm gonna have them help.
And so have they done their documents yet, or they have not yet started their documents for that?
No, she doesn't have those yet,
Okay,
so.
they're gonna do
But
their
that's an inside job, so we don't have to worry as much.
Right, it's certainly more attractive for contractors at that time of the year to get some inside work.
Yeah, right.
Tab is working on bid documents. And, have they given any, have you spoken with them at all about this, any timelines that they've identified, or?
No, we haven't.
We don't know, there's a timeline yet for going out to bid.
No.
Great, thank you for the update. But getting that check, first step.
Yeah,
So
well,
thank you.
It was great.
And that then brings us then for our grant on the northwest parapet here.
Right, and this one, as you can see, okay, when our original ask, 75% of that was 176,206. What we got is 160,747, or 740, whatever, 474, which is 68.3% rather than the 75. Now, this is one that could come up with more funds on this one. It's possible. But anyway, our share now is gonna be 74,467.
Bring your 4 returns.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So there's always that chance, not guaranteed, but in the last 3 years, I've seen money return. In fact, I think the 2021, we were not fully funded the first time, and we were one of the first libraries to get the money back. So I believe it's 400.
So then for the parapet reconstruction project there, then I guess we also need to get bid documents for that.
Well, not right away. I mean, we don't have final approval from the state on that yet.
Okay.
And we certainly don't have the money yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, so we've gotten the.
So we got
We have gotten the check.
Yeah, we got a little wait on that.
And we're waiting for a DASNY on that.
Right, yeah, they have to give final approval for the actual funding.
Thank you for sharing this. This is very helpful. Does anyone have any other questions about ongoing recurrent capital projects or grants? We'll move on to the HSR.
So Paul, I'll use this to update the funding document, which indicates the amount that we need for our match.
Yeah, when I figured these numbers are a little tricky. It gets reasonably complicated depending on what happens with these grants. Now, there's certainly no guarantees.
But we keep it updated.
But what I figured out most recently is that we're obligated for about 123,000. So what I figured so far that we're waiting for, in terms of, some of the grants that are outstanding, we'll have 75,000 in the unrestricted construction. We're gonna be short about 50,000 for what we've got on our plate right now. There was a request, or there will be a request to the foundation, which I didn't count. So that will help. Now, those figures are not written in stone, because these grants don't always these constructions don't always go the way that I wrote originally.
And which we found with the walls, that was needed.
Yeah. And this one, you know, this one particularly might be more expensive, but that's how I planned it anyway. That's where I think we are.
Moving forward, it might be good to build in a contingency factor into the grant application process. Will allow for potential.
Well,
It gives a little more cushion there.
we do that when we ask for the, estimates from the contractors. It's a little tricky to get that.
We ask them to carry contingency?
What's that?
You're saying we ask them to carry a contingency?
Yeah, we ask for that. We can't supply that. We have to, the contractor's estimate is what that grant is based on.
Oh, you're saying before we're going through the grant application.
We have an application, okay? So the application of what they ask for is an estimate from the contractor.
Yes.
Okay, on that application, I need to put the amount on that estimate. So, you know, we ask the contractor, look, put in a contingency in case, for example, you're talking about asbestos, you know, or whatever.
Yes. I think that you're asking the contractors during the bid process. to do
Yeah.
that. No, you're talking about
No,
before.
this is the estimate.
Yes.
That's not the
Thank you.
bid.
That's,
Yeah.
that's, contractors do a few different things. Thank you for clarifying.
I was surprised, I mean, the contractors I get estimates from, normally, you know, have done a good job, and they don't charge, you know. I know there's libraries that pay for those estimates, but, anyway.
That is great. Kind of generous of them.
That estimate, by the way, is submitted with the grant.
Yes.
So,
I wasn't sure we were actually to add that contingency. Yes, they do it during the.
yeah, they don't let me put in nothing at 10%, you know, contingency.
Yeah. Okay. Again, any other questions about ongoing construction projects? On the historic structures report, we've gotten a draft report back in September that was shared out, and had some initial discussions on. There been some feedback from staff, from members of the board, and those comments been shared with Lisa Cohen Wilson Baker, and they've been updating the plans and the report to reflect those comments. We had heard comments about the amount of staff space in the building. They have made some efforts to address that. There were comments about the separation between the public circulation spaces and staff spaces. Those have been defined better, and some relationships have been reconfigured down on the ground floor to improve those relationships, particularly in that path of travel from the elevator to the Troy room. That would have required the public to travel through workspaces. So that's been reconfigured to provide better separation and for us. Sketch that scene so far. I think that's sketched weeks ago. There was a request to include a young adult section, which had not previously been addressed. So that is being incorporated into the plans. I haven't seen anything on that yet, but I understand it's being incorporated. In addition, they are working on cost estimates for the work. That will be included as part of the next iteration of the report. Told that we will be getting the next iteration of the report next Friday, 29th, and that we as a board will be meeting on the 9th of October, November, thank you, and meeting Larry Wilson and Gina Glennis will be here to go over that report with us. So we're going to get a copy of that report. That report will be shared out with everybody here, everybody on the board. That's why I would encourage you to share with staff as well. Get their input on it, and then we would then be meeting with the architects to review that. Now, again, I'll reiterate, this is a schematic, a pre-schematic design plan. This is not a final plan. So it's not that changes will not happen. Changes will happen if this plan is moved forward. Design to move forward with this plan. It will be revised, updated, and refined. Hopefully, it will be used as a tool instead of direction, perhaps. Any other thoughts on the historic structures report piece? At our last meeting of the board, of this committee, last meeting of this committee, we talked about that, the renovation of this building is just one strategy. The library to provide services to our community. And that before we spend tons of time and effort to...
Sorry.
It's very cheery.
Friday, yeah.
So, as I was saying, renovations of this building here is one option for how the library can continue to provide services to our community. There may be other options as well. And so, at our last meeting, I asked committee members to come forward with options that they think would be important to explore before we start investing lots of sweat and money into finalizing a direction here for renovation of this building. So, I had, from our notes from our last meeting, I sort of reiterated the options that were discussed at our last meeting. I understand that there were some of the members here who were not at the last meeting and did not have a chance to contribute to that. So I certainly would welcome your thoughts and input on this here, of what's already been proposed, and then to also hear your thoughts on what should be considered, if there's anything else that you see that's not been addressed or included here. So I don't know if you want to jump in and offer things now, or if you'd like to go through and talk about these options that have been presented, and perhaps if there are questions, you can elaborate on those questions.
I don't, I'm just kind of looking this over. So these are just some different.
Right. And if you like, and I'm sort of not going to say, oh, you have to tell me right now what you think the best plan is.
No.
That would be, the rest of the committee hears this all about for a year, so I wouldn't expect you to be, have your thoughts organized right this instant. So if they do this more than a year, so.
Right.
What I might suggest is, why don't we go through these options, talk about these options, maybe clarify any questions on these options, and then if you have thoughts on it.
I do have two things that I'm tinting my lenses with right now.
Okay.
One of them is, for each option, evaluating costs in terms of costs of ownership, what it costs to sustain and operate.
Yep.
And that includes both things like energy usage, intensity of maintenance. The other on that is which option is gonna, when we look at options and layouts, we have to be conscious of staffing. Are there options that will function better with fewer staff? Because I think what we're experiencing now is gonna continue for several years.
Well, and some of these options here require more staff. So
Right.
that would, certainly, I think you're right, energy use, financing, staffing, maintenance, are all factors that will have to be considered as we consider these options here. So, I think that there will be, I think we'll have a list of options, we'll have factors that play into it, initial costs, carrying costs, energy usage, staffing, additional staffing, less staffing, current staffing. And then we'll have sort of, I think, a little matrix that will help us to look at where the strengths and weaknesses are, really help us to arrive at, we as a committee think is gonna be.
While my heart wishes to have branches throughout the city, our wallet is probably not gonna permit that. And I think we're still evaluating how everybody's business model changed in the last year and a half. I understand, and I think we still have to work out what that means in terms of what services are requested and how they're provided.
That there may be changes in terms of what services we are providing and.
Well, I think there's no doubt, from an operational perspective, that multiple locations are gonna cost more. The cheapest thing to do is one single location. I mean, in terms of operations. So yes, it's true that multiple locations are gonna cost more to run.
So if it's okay with folks, I'd like to,
Kind of interesting to me that I look at this, you got Lansingburg, Sickaway, Beaman Park, East Side, nothing in North Central.
so are you talking about option A?
And yet, any of these that talk about having any kind of outreach besides
Okay,
A and B.
well, let's, why don't we go through one at a time
Okay.
and sort of talk these through here, because I think some of them have a couple different, scenarios. So I think option A, talks about, restoring this building here to the extent needed for a local branch library. $2 million investment. So the Lansingburg branch built 3 new branch libraries, about 6,000 square feet each, single story, park for 20 cars. And so there are 3 locations that are sort of identified: Lansingburg, Way, East Side. Those are 3 locations that are included in that option. And so I think I hear that you think there might be some other locations that might be preferable in lieu of these, or in addition?
Or in addition, I mean, obviously Lansingburg, Sickaway, Beaman Park, they're all, and then the other one has South Troy.
So that, you might put that in the back of your mind there, hang on to that there, and that maybe that's gonna be the option that you want to recommend, that we would, do something that would provide 4 branch libraries, if that's what you're thinking of. As mentioned, you'd like to have a branch library everywhere, but we can't. So you have to take that balance there between, how many branches we have and where those branches are located. So keep that in mind. Are there any questions about option A?
Those are locations, by the way, basically off the top of my head.
Okay.
Those are not based on demographic
Okay.
studies,
Or who's
which
using
would have to be
library or
done.
who's not.
So you're open to exploring
Yeah.
other locations, but 3 is the number that you think, in addition to the branch here.
Yeah, I mean, again, the more branches you have, the more expensive operating you're gonna have.
And was this your suggestion? And so, and you chose to build rather than lease, just because you feel like it's better that we own the
I
building?
think so, I think you have more control, over, you know, your space and parking and that sort of thing. I think in the long run, probably better to build.
Okay.
Lease also is a limited thing, and sometimes it's more complicated to get grants in order to, you know, maintain the structure, that sort of thing. So I think in terms of libraries, and I wouldn't say that's necessarily a good model for business, but it's for libraries, I think it is.
Okay.
And there may be an option to lease the ground and build the building.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if if wonderful options become available, I mean, yes, take advantage of it. But it's not always easy it's not always possible. I've looked at real estate in this area, you know, with the idea of branching, and it's tough to find anything that really works.
So speaking of leases, so if you look at option B, there we are,
Right.
restore the main branch library, build an addition at the Lansingburg branch, and more functionally operational, I guess, and Gary, this is your recommendation, and then to lease or rent space from other organizations, create small mini branches. And Jerry, I wasn't sure, you said create small mini branches, but do you have any thoughts on how many of those small mini branches?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm sorry, Jerry. When we met last month, we talked about some options to explore for how the library might provide services moving forward. And one of the options you had suggested was potentially renting or leasing space from other organizations to create small mini branches, 600 square foot mini branches. So that's 1/10 the size of the other branches. And did you have any thoughts on how many of those small mini branches we might be ideal for us?
Well, I'm thinking, as it was talked about in option A, those locations that we talked about, and of building, possibly linking up with other buildings that are there, and creating smaller spaces to hold either programs or be able to, have books that can be sent around to those different branches. I hadn't really thought about it because I don't work in the library, but perhaps somebody who has had experience working in the library could think about that and how those other places might be utilized as branches, rather than build them ourselves and own them ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So in both A and B, we're talking about just stabilizing the service to keep
Yes.
it exactly as it is, but without slowing down.
Do the work to fix it,
Okay.
which they're recommending, the two million.
Okay. Okay.
And so Jerry was asking for any guidance, so we might, on her option for renting or leasing space for small 600 square foot mini branches. If we were to keep this building, keep and enlarge Lansingburg, if we were to have these small mini outposts in addition, another 600 square foot mini outposts in addition to those, is there, and so Jerry's, it wasn't clear if it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more of these mini branches. In order to evaluate this, we're gonna have to quantify this. I'm trying to tease out if there's any, how many of those mini branches we might be looking at in this auction.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with that. Usually what they do with the, you see the minivan situation that libraries have opened in their malls, you know, which was common and still is, in some places. The actual property, like a mini branch separate, I don't have much experience in terms of, you know, how that relates to the service we're trying to provide. I mean, you know, you can't have much in it. You can't have any larger meetings in it. It doesn't seem like it would be established as a neighborhood center. I'd have to see some in operation, you know, to say this thing works. I haven't. I couldn't even point right now to anybody who has it.
My thoughts there are, at least it's bigger than a bookmobile. And with things that we didn't have when I was growing up, like the electronic card catalog, it might provide a chance to get the books delivered to you within a 10-minute walk to you, and at least provide a reading room. And you possibly could end up locating it in places where there are already other organizations providing things like community meeting spaces. So we don't have to recreate that wheel in that situation, but we're doing library services. You know, I go back to the days when there were the little, basically a mini branch in the schools.
Well, we had one, Chipaway,
Yep.
I guess. It could be considered a mini branch, although it was a little bigger than 600. Anyway.
If that's bigger than 600, we're in trouble.
But anyway, it's, we did have that, from a service perspective, I don't know if it was worthwhile. Like I said, it doesn't become a real community center or resource. It's just a place where you pick up books. I don't know, and I think.
The library is now closed.
Yeah, I think when you look at, the changes that have taken place in libraries, I think we're looking at becoming more of, community centers, you know, and, community resources, but more so than just having books that you can pick. So, I mean, I don't know, it would need a lot more thought on, in terms of establishing those. And plus, don't forget, you're multiplying your staff. You got a staff to bring, you got hours.
Right.
And you're gonna have to buy a van just to service.
Well, pretty much, yeah, it's just, you'd have to talk up, us into delivering to 7 different new locations. I don't know if we could do that.
You do us all, Vinnie.
So, Jerry, we'll carry this further forward, but I think if we're gonna really try and evaluate it, we're gonna need at least a guesstimate on how many of these mini branches we're talking about. It sounds like Paul doesn't have much experience with them and is not able to make a recommendation on it. So if you can come forward with a recommendation, I think we could evaluate this further, so let's put it on the back burner.
I was thinking, so teaming up with the Italian Community Center, for instance, we might have space where we could even do programs there, and that's more, well, it's closer to South Troy, but I think we really need them way down in South Troy, like maybe in School 2. Is that the name of the school that's down there? I don't remember. School 12. Just a thought about what a base is available that we might be able to team up with other groups. And I don't know where the 600 square foot came. I don't remember saying that. It's just a thought, you know. Yeah, I know staffing would be a problem. Others would be a problem, but it was my thought. But that's fine. We don't need to vote on it.
And 600 square feet is comparable to the Sickaway branch. So the reading room at the Sickaway
Okay.
branch was 600 feet.
Okay,
And as Keith pointed out, you know, as you mentioned as well, you know, sharing with another organization, so we get some shared facilities like conference rooms or that. There may be some synergies there. I'm just trying to understand how many of these branches we might want to target, just so we can sort of test it out a little bit more.
So what is the rationale behind building an addition onto Lansingburg? I mean, what makes us think that Lansingburg is a key place to build a bigger building that is already falling
I
down?
think it's just because it has our space around it.
Yeah, I think,
That's what I wonder too, you know, is that the only reason that we're even considering that? Establishing need
Right.
for expanding space.
I think we did hear that there were some challenges with the space that is there, that because there are different levels of the building, that some of the space is not easily usable.
Right.
But I think
it's just the first,
need for limited elevators versus
That could be.
more physical.
first thing you look at when you want to establish branches is residential areas.
Right.
And Lansingburg is still a big residential area.
It is, but I mean, as we said, the building is in tough shape. I don't know whether we want to build on it or do we want to find a new place in Lansingburg?
I wouldn't build that. Y'all can build that if you want to.
I was just saying,
Well, and I think
Plus, I don't even know if you can because it's on the historic register. I don't know where you would build on it. You can't build on the back because that's the property line.
right.
But it was a brainstorming idea. Right.
Yeah.
Which is
That was the whole
Right. Yeah.
brain time. And, you know, I mean, obviously, Lansingburg has had its challenges.
And, you know, we're not at the point yet to, you know, start striking things. We're just trying to make sure we understand what the proposal is from the various constituents. So,
Okay.
on option B, I think there's still a little bit of a question of how many mini branches, and hoping that we'll get some guidance on that. Sounds like it's something that Paul's not familiar with, so, Jerry, we're gonna look to you to provide that guidance. On option C, also it's very similar to option B, except for in lieu of mini branches, this is provide 2 to 3 vehicles, the mobile mini branches or the bookmobiles, as Keith described it, which that something that can be defined and articulated a little bit and developed further, so we can develop that from a cost benefit analysis. Anyone have questions on that strategy?
Yeah, I think costing too, the mobile thing is pretty expensive.
And
You know, if you look at a 600 square foot mini branch, okay, in a building, as opposed to something that runs around the street with 2 staff members and a ton of insurance coverage and repairs to the vehicle and, you know. It's basically why some libraries dropped out of the mobile branch idea, but.
I know, something the size of the bookmobiles with the mobile command posts or customer service centers that state government uses. I know what they cost a few years ago. It's a big bite.
Yeah.
And we will get into that as we do this analysis, and I'll be reaching out to you guys.
Yeah, there's libraries that have lots of experiences with mobile and with bookmobiles and that sort of thing.
And certainly, mobile nowadays, because you're dealing with the availability of electronic catalogs and all that, you're gonna need more comms so you can reach the electronic catalogs.
Yeah.
So now it starts looking a lot more like a command post, just because of the automation that's now required to provide library services.
Yeah, the normal configuration for the bookmobile too is 2 staff people, 1 driver and 1 librarian. So, you're looking at some serious expense.
I think though that we wanted to make sure that we weren't overlooking something.
Yeah, no, that's
We
true.
want to invest a lot of money in a direction, only to find that, oh my goodness, this would have been so much better. We just didn't stop to think of it. I think, as Evelyn said, this is really supposed to be a brainstorming, stimulating each other's thinking by sharing ideas.
If there are no other questions about the bookmobile option there, option C, let's move on to option D. So there, that's really talking about taking this building here and sort of refocusing and can I summarize or? Refocusing the purpose of this building here from a special purpose library, or a special purpose library, and potentially other things as well in here, I think is what the whole was. And then, building a new main building, this is line 3, our new main large circulating library, somewhere in East Greenbush, multiple locations, on a bus route, with parking. And then, this option here is a little open-ended in terms of what the plan is for Lansingburg. So I was wondering if we could talk about how that might, in order to evaluate this area, how that might, what the plan for Lansingburg might be.
It was very vague.
Yes,
I was, like,
I'm hoping that after a month, you had a chance to think about it a little bit, and maybe provide a little clarity on it.
well, actually, I think that is pretty much still stands, even though it's vague. Having lost Pickaway, I have a very hard time saying any other community should use their library. I also know how the census at Lansingburg has been increasing over time. I also know it's an old building. I know it's not handicap accessible, and trying to make it that way is difficult. There's really no meeting space there. But there is some utilization. At what point can it be revitalized and used as is? At this point, I would not be I probably wouldn't be making it larger until I know that people were using it. So I have a very difficult time saying, I'm not going to pronounce the accession of the building. At the same time, I know it's also a drag on the budget here. I do know that it's taking resources. If what's going on now hasn't made that really clear, nothing else will. And this is why I'm purposely being vague, because it's one of those, I think it's a more difficult decision for me, and thought process and what to do here.
So I have an idea, and I'll put this forward and see if this
Sure.
alleviates your worries. Understand, taking a library away from a neighborhood where they already have one. What if the new large circulating library were in Lansingburg? Then we close the Lansingburg branch.
I have to think about that. I really would, because like where? How? And
We can get into the where and how. But
And then,
But I think it's in lieu of, it's somewhere in that vicinity.
but my first reaction, these are just gut reactions, I'm just, right, that's what we kind of do, is we have a very vocal population here who wants to keep their library walkable. Well, you're doing that, aren't you?
If it's in Lansingburg, if we move a big one over there, it's not as, and if this becomes a special purpose library, it might, it could have some of the amenities that we have now, certainly,
Right.
but it wouldn't have certain other things, possibly. And so if we were doing the main thing over there, we lose a lot of the people that go to programs, that use it for meetings. How many groups over there really would use a bigger space?
This is why we get the
Versus
big box.
here, versus here, you know, something closer, and certainly those who are downtown, where city resources are really being placed, let's, you know, have to be honest about that. More city resources are placed downtown, you know, money's coming in, usually downtown is the first area, that they think about. This is where the population is coming now, is downtown. We might be taking something away from them if it's not available, walkable to people who are not town.
I got a couple of questions with this. I don't know what you mean by stabilized main library.
We'll do all the things we need so the parapet doesn't fall down and,
So the $2 million.
yeah, the $2 million part.
All right,
The stabilization is
that's what I sort of think of as renovate. I mean, because that's,
Yeah, it's funny, Kirsten uses the word maintenance for that. I use stabilization.
yeah, a lot of it's just plain old maintenance. But I mean,
You say renovation,
Right.
everybody, no, renovations, we
And
take
I-
care of
I
our
don't-
inside.
I don't know what possibly the special purpose library would be. What's that?
I can tell you something that has been proposed, and that, someone had suggested during the whatever, on the input that we had, is done, that this become an archive. And that Historical Society could all their materials over here, like, you know, what they got from the Troy Savings Bank. TAP would like to put all their drawings and blueprints and so forth over here. And that there be another library that serves as a circulating library elsewhere. So that was a proposal that came.
So you see this as not being circulating at all? Or,
Isn't that what you were saying? The one that says circulating library would be at least. So that's what it was.
There will be somewhere, it doesn't say where.
Somewhere.
Right, somewhere else, that it would not be circulating.
For my term of circulating library means where you can have your group meetings, your, community meetings, where you can pick up your materials and go, programming, et cetera, would be at someplace bigger where there's more flexible use of space than there is here. It might not totally, again, these are operational issues that come down further down the line, but it doesn't mean you would not be precluded for pickup or delivery.
A
As a,
mini branch here.
it kind of be,
Either-
yeah,
Either X number, 100 or 1,000 square feet, mini branch here.
right, so there might be still someone working for the library proper here, and there could be some library type activity here. It doesn't preclude that, but we have the tri-room, and I had to look at this could be the giant tri-room. And I do know, I don't know if that was the same problem or a different one, that someone came to me and said, what I suggested was that it become a research library that has all the makings of that. And if we were to do that, then we could keep it a closed staff library, we would not
Even
have.
though we're chartered to serve as a public library for the city of Troy,
Yeah,
we would devote 23,000 square feet and millions, make this into a research library?
well, it depends what you mean by million. We still,
Well, we're already talking 2 million just to fix it.
well, we're talking about, what we need to, that is part of our responsibility, is maintaining this structure.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it's something the
I'm not
public will-
questioning that, I'm questioning special purpose here. as two problems, as I say. I think turning our major resource into a research library is certainly questionable in terms of serving as a public library for the city of Troy. The other part is partnering with a little 501c3 that doesn't have any money either. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, what if, so there are grants that we, as not a 501c3, can go after, right? That other organizations can't. But there are grants that we cannot, monies that we can't, I'll just say larger, monies that we can't go after because we are not a 501c3, that
Well,
they
you
can.
have to point out, because it's real, I haven't found a lot of grants that would be used on a building, in a library. I mean,
Well, there's,
whether we were a 501c3 or not.
there's a lot of money now coming in, and it's not just for libraries and museums. I mean, that's the heading of the bill, you know, it's not just the library money, it's libraries and museums. I also think that it's not just grants, I know it's hard to find grants, period, but if you look at raising money, if you have a whole other niche of individuals who see that different purpose and are willing to put money in that versus a library, then you have people who still, it's not going to be a library, a little different. Some people who see it as a library and part of our library system, which would be the other place, this place, possibly the Berg, is we are in an entity, we're not just this one building, and are willing to put their money, donate their money to this library. When people give money.
Where are they now?
Well, even if it's the 5, 10, 50, 100, whatever, when people are giving money, they're giving it to the library. It's not, I'm giving it to me. Right?
But
It's function, it's service.
what I see, if this became a special purpose library without a solid branch to it, is people from the east side and the south end asking, why am I paying a dime to put, when I can't use what I used to have, and now they put it someplace else?
Well, that's
And
exactly
that, and that, they would put it a little more closely than that.
So that's what I mean when I say we're trying to serve as a public library for this community.
Well, the people on the east side who say, we don't, this on this building, if we can find someplace that makes it easier to get there, to park, that they could take the bus, to get there. I know people in certain areas, when I've done outreach, who said, well, I can't get there because I can't drive, my grandma can't drive me, and she can't walk, and the bus isn't out there. So if it becomes walkable for people who want it to be walkable, for people to drive and maybe find a place to park, because there have been times I've just given up on coming in because I can't find one that's decent, you know, within a decent walk for me. And on a bus route, I can't see how they say, oh, well, you've just taken something away from me. I'm not saying that we shouldn't keep a branch in here then. I don't think that's not a bad idea. But that's, to me, something that comes down operationally later. But that's why I'm trying to hope we can find a space that makes everybody happy. Because it is trying to find a place that will work for all the different neighborhoods. Because right now, this is not the best solution for me on the hill.
Mm-hmm. I know that.
This has been a good conversation here, I appreciate it. Well, I think we do need to get either to say that the new building would be located in Lansingburg and we get rid of the Lansingburg building, or that if the building is located elsewhere, that we would maintain the Lansingburg building, or I think we need to define that piece of it. So everyone, I'm hoping that by next month you'll have sharpen your thoughts on that and we can evaluate it. Right now, it's not in a position where it can be evaluated as an option because we don't have a big question mark there. what happens with the Lansingburg branch.
Is it premature to have discussions with the city of Troy on their capital plans in Lansingburg? Would some type of branch attached to a new fire station or up at the ice rink or near, eventually a pole, would that partnership be appropriate? I don't know how far along, I know Troy Fire has looked at a couple of sites. So I don't know how far along they actually are on that, or what their longer range plan is for the ice rink property.
So I think I'm gonna ask you to put that in your memory here. When we get to the end of the list here, we're gonna add things on here. This sounds like something we wanna add on, so you
Well, I think you'd have to bring in somebody from the city to,
That's
who's got
what-
some expertise.
That's what I'm asking.
I have no idea what kind of spaces are out there, you know.
I will just add that, in response, that if someone else has some ideas of like, all right, we'll do it, we like that separate option, this is what you could do for Lansingburg, it doesn't have to be just my mind thinking of that other,
I just wanna,
you know,
I don't wanna step on your idea. I don't.
Oh, no.
I don't wanna take your idea. I want you to tell me your idea. Or if
No.
you're open to ideas.
I'm open to ideas, especially about Lansingburg. I'm much, I have admitted, I'm more open to that than I am to the thoughts I have about this part of the system. So, it might be me, I think, saying this, well, solidifying my thoughts or sharpening my thoughts. But if someone said, hey, if you do it X, if you do D, here's an idea for Lansingburg, I have no problem with someone else coming up with a possible scenario for that.
Do you have any thoughts I wanna share with
Okay.
me? I can certainly update the idea and share it after.
I just think that if you do this one, and you purchase a building and renovate it to a new large facility library, I think you have to kind of have an idea in mind where that's gonna be. I don't think it can just be anywhere in Troy that's walkable with a bus route, you know what I mean? If we're gonna keep this as a kind of a branch, then do we not want this new place to be downtown? Do we want it to be in another location, or do we want it to be downtown someplace else, or just kind of focus on that as well?
I think when you look at, you know, what is a building on the bus route, I always thought we were on the bus route because it's only a block over.
Yeah, I think, I was gonna ask about that too.
Yeah, it stops down here. Now, it used to stop right in front of us, okay? But they changed it. Now, that's another thing. You want to build a building on the bus route, what if they change the bus route?
Which they are
can do that.
probably, if, you know, they talk about changing the configuration coming off the Congress Street Bridge.
Yeah.
At
Oh,
some
yeah.
point, if they can even get that through state,
No.
at some point, that would influence how the buses run.
Yeah? Oh,
Well,
yeah.
they're moving ahead.
In some cases, we don't changes, so we have to make sure that what we are planning, is able to, monitor.
Yeah, I think-
changes or not.
I think you have to consider the bus route as an approximation. Downtown is gonna be on,
All right, thanks.
Right.
it may be a block or two.
They did change
Yeah.
and moved it over in front of.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, that's going to be a constant change, you know that,
yeah.
an issue we have as far as, what our building should be. Because there can be dramatic shifts.
So I apologize, everyone has got two option Ds here, I'll have to,
I think we can change that.
You can work on that.
no, that's intentional, I have extras here because I want to make sure we
We'll just
have
change it.
options.
Remember, D1 is about scholarships. That's it.
Okay, D2, renovate the Hart Library, And in collaboration with Norfolk County and the courthouse, build a new multi-level parking garage on the site next door. Grade level parking garage will be the library addition. Shared support. What we use upper level parking. So I guess this would have the library underneath, there's a parking on top. And then keep the Lansingburg branch as it is.
But then you're partnering with the county, and you don't know year to year what the composition of county government's gonna be. Now, there has been some discussion in the past about them doing some major real estate changes in their downtown footprint. I don't know where they're going with that right now. Obviously, the pandemic distracted them, and we gotta get through an election. But I don't know how long they're gonna be committed to their present footprint. They're probably stuck with the courthouse. That doesn't mean they're sticking with the courthouse annex. You know, someone talked specifically was getting off of Seventh Avenue.
And we don't really know. I think they did have a grant in for a parking garage. County did a few years ago, they didn't get it. But when you look at that space back there, for a parking garage, if you go sit down with the county and say, well, how many cars, do you need? They're gonna say about 1 million. They have no parking for, like, people come in
No parking for jury.
for jury. So you come in here Monday, we can call it Jury Monday around here. You can't find parking anywhere, and then all of a sudden, they're all gone. But they would want that kind of parking, but in addition to all the people that work there. So that's a lot of spaces, and then the library would need 30, 40 spaces. That's a huge parking garage.
And
At the same, downtown, they could accommodate the 4 or 5, 6-story parking garage.
Yeah, that's what it is, it's one of those.
I just think what it would be compared to what current, that parking lot, the open parking lot to the south of Ferry, that's Russell Page. Also, actually, would include Russell Page as well.
Okay.
The three, it's of interest to the city because the city's concerned about having available parking.
That's fine.
I think that the city is also a player in this, and I've heard the deputy mayor talk about how this is something she would like to see. Okay, it's not, it's a little pie in the sky, but not totally.
If we were to be looking at the Russell Sage parking lot, what would you see the library's function in that parking garage? It would be just for parking, or do you also be looking at things that, maybe that first floor function that we have up here could be over there?
I believe in the concept that you have your first floor be some kind of used space, not for cars. So that's why I like the idea, plus you get the use. Going over there and, it works well with us.
This site here, I think I see that makes a lot of sense.
But,
Do you see the same thing over there at the Russell Sage parking lot for the library, specifically for the library?
in lieu or two parking garages or?
I thought you were talking about in blue. I thought you said if we can't do something with the county, maybe we could do something with Russell Sage. Maybe I misheard that.
I'm bothered by that kind of bombed out space. There's a lot of space that's devoted to parking.
Yeah.
Lots.
I agree with you.
Right next to one another in our downtown. It's not just a matter of the library, although I think it offers potential opportunity, but also, urban planning for.
I don't disagree with you. In the interest of this conversation, though, for the library.
I'm proposing the one back
Okay.
here, which is what was proposed, 10 years ago?
Yeah,
The county lot. For joint benefit, I mean, it may be possible that then Russell Sage's parking lot would become available for development.
And, you know, certainly if we were to do something with Russell State on that model there, we certainly could use it for parking. We could say, oh, we can have 30 parking spots in there, and then we would contribute whatever percentage that is to get 30 parking spots. It's expensive, but it's really important to have more parking here. People say, oh, we gotta have parking here. Say, okay, we can create parking there, and we can calculate the cost for what that parking would cost.
And some people I talked to have said, well, you know, they started thinking about how much you can charge for the use of that parking, you know, and that you could possibly make money on it. The county changing its mind doesn't worry me too much, because that may leave options if the county wants to go out.
Well, and if you do anything with the county, I think we'd have to have some sort of long-term, very solid, legal binding contract that say we've got commitment here that's 20 years. We don't want to be revisiting this here every time.
Which also gets me nervous about Russell Sage, because they're not leading any indexes in terms of financial stability.
Well, but a parking garage is one thing. If we were doing internet service, I would be more worried about. Once it's built, it's built.
I'm not particularly in the know, but I do believe they're doing better than they have.
On this one, that's renovate, is that, again, just do the $2 million, or is that, like, we're gonna do this plan that, whatever this group is called, proposed? This Smithwick, Owen and Wilson Baker. When, and part of this D2, the number one is renovate, so is that just,
Right, not just picture the deferred maintenance stuff,
but make it,
making this a more
okay,
accommodating
More like it.
library.
okay.
And just seeing the, you know, the addition that the parking slot might provide,
Mhm.
being needing expanded space for the library.
yeah, I think we're gonna have to, I don't know, change some wording a little bit, because I get confused. Well, I was thinking of renovate, with the 2 million, not the 10 million, you know. So there's, could be two different ways of looking at it. When you do, just change the wording.
Maybe we could say major renovation.
Yeah, I mean, to renovate,
Long-term uncertain.
yeah, I was thinking, you know, renovate at this point was to spend the 2 million to fix it.
Yeah.
Whatever needs to be fixed, which is their estimate so far. And, you know, the full renovation into a 21st century library was over 10 million. I don't know.
Want to call that modernization?
What?
Want to call that modernization?
I guess.
It's sort of the loaded word.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
that's-
Yeah, that's tough to
People
use.
love the characters, so, oh, they're modern.
right, yeah.
Okay.
No, that's tough to use in this context.
I think if we can start putting dollar amounts on it here, it'll help clarify it, so.
All right.
On option A, we got the 2 million on there.
Which
Right.
I think option, so we'll try, but they're excellent points there. Appreciate it.
What would be the 10 mil?
I'm gonna start putting down 2 million or 10 million, again, as our estimates.
Yeah, right.
Million for that.
And, if I get it wrong, please let me know.
Okay.
Again, I'll send these out as drafts, my notes, and this understood anything on that. Move on to option E, renovate the main branch and the Lansingburg branch, and so I think I understand option E, renovate main branch means the 10 million. And rent space approximately $4,000 from Russell State for the children's library. Yeah. If we could, we're square feet from Russell Sage, in Children's Library, that would then not be in the addition, I suppose here, we propose to reduce that addition size by 4,000 feet for the work in this building here that's been described in the,
Yes, it's just, it's a way that might be more cost effective.
right now, I'm sorry.
And, you know, with the thought that perhaps Russell Page wasn't using all of this space and would be very close at hand, so it would be much easier to support than if, you know, like, we're in addition.
So then option E, for renovate main park library, instead of 10 million, up down 9 million. Placeholder.
If the option depends on being close to the main library, then you're somewhat limited as to where, you know, you're gonna be able to place it. If they said, no, we don't have the space, okay, there's other properties, but, you know, I mean, it's just
And there were other things too that kind of made it come to mind. The fact that they had a psychology program and their students could be involved. So it wouldn't necessarily just be a physical space, but they could also be involved programmatically and mutually beneficial.
I wonder about that, because, okay, where are children Monday through Friday? They're engaged in school. So what kind of hours would you even be running a children's library? When the kids are there, it's quite possible the students are done for the day, or the kids are here for the summer, and the students are on summer break.
I actually was involved in a program page that was a summer. So I don't really know how many students they have ordinarily. I think that students don't necessarily just go to school, I never did.
Well, and the other piece is that, you know, there's also the preschool portion as well, that literacy, learning to read, that sort of thing. Maybe opportunities for that.
I mean, they don't have a library program. There is some synergy. Like when you were, if it wasn't you, when they had the program out in Sage Park. And it was so nice, it was something that was visible for people to see. Advantage of our environment. Collaboration, again, similar to what other people, when they talked about using space that was directly reliant on our spaces.
This is real, as I thought about this. At least that program was like a one-shot deal. Families could all be together and be there. Depending on how, let's say, another organization, whether it's safe or not, expands or contracts, you could lose your space there. And if you're trying to get some permanence of location, that could be a problem. And I don't know how someone who's involved in library services directly would feel about having two, like adult service and children's service in two separate locations, especially if, like, on the weekends, families show up. And sometimes parents want to do something, and they let their kids but they're still in the building, or they're close at hand, but if someone's even across the street, or the parents are here doing something different, it just changes that dynamic of family time. That would be kind of my sort of a reaction to this.
Right, that would be a
Problematic.
downside, but that's true of any of the alternatives that we use. There are pros and cons.
Oh, absolutely.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could take Sage Park and build our new modern library there? Parking from someplace.
I have trouble understanding what's really needed with children's library, children's services. Because when I was a kid, by 7 or 8, I'd outgrown that, And my brother and I just hung out all summer in the stacks randomly reading. We loved it. He brought that up when I talked to him on his birthday 2 weeks ago.
The children's library is almost like the first place to bring people in. It's the place where they come in and start their whole lifelong relationship with the public library. So I see children's library as probably the most important part.
Is there a benefit, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was gonna ask if you see that as a introduction to the library, is there a benefit or is there a detriment by having the children's library at a separate location from the rest of the library?
I think it's a detriment, you know, I don't see it as I don't know that I've ever seen a children's library separate from the main library as far as offer services, because you just can't, like, you know, like you said, you know, your kids are here, and what if you want something, then it becomes a 2-step process, but, you know, you want it to be a family kind of location, a community center where, you know, everybody's kind of all together, so I think putting the kids in a whole other building across the street would be difficult, challenging.
What about something like the Troy room or a special purpose library?
You could put over there.
Location?
Oh, you could.
About how much room?
For the Troy room, if you use it correctly, I mean, the Troy room could be a huge draw, but it's not, because it's not, I don't think utilized or maintained in the way it should be.
But would you think there'd be that same detriment?
No.
That we're- So would you be open to amending this year to, instead of a children's library, looking at doing a special purpose, a special collections library, let's call it? Would be the term.
I would put down, you know, I wouldn't rule out either,
You're adding that as
yeah,
or?
or just, you know, part of the issue with the Troy room is that it doesn't have dedicated staff.
Mm-hmm.
Children's library, so that's part of the reason I thought about, I agree, it's certainly, you know, you prefer to see things in place. I think that children's services, at least from when I was young, have changed, that there are a lot more programs offered. And I think that, you know, helping children to learn to read by having parents read really important service. So, but, you know, I would not rule out any good idea. Especially as we think about this in brainstorming, you know, that other things could come out of what's being proposed here. I think that there are advantages to renting space because it gives you more flexibility if the needs change. So, you know, like the fact that there's less space needed for physical books now. And if you're renting rather than owning, you have some flexibility. Of course, if you own, you could also rent out some of your space. Pros and cons on all of it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Kirsten, I was kind of hoping towards 6 o'clock,
We're almost there.
based on some obligations that I do have.
Sure. I'll be very brief then on option F. That was, that's my contribution, which is basically go ahead with the renovations that are discussed in the Wilson Baker report and program study. And then at Lansingburg, look, and I think this has evolved a little bit. It sounds like at Lansingburg, we aren't necessarily looking for more space. We're looking to be able to use the space that we have there better. So I think that I'm thinking at Lansingburg might be that we would build a small addition by ADA access, vertical access, bathrooms, and the meeting spaces. small meeting space, so I think a small addition.
So the lift and loop.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, yeah, technically, the building is not designed as a branch library.
Right.
It's, you know, they have the whole second floor that, you know, is difficult to access. So you would actually make up a lot of space if you could somehow renovate, you know, that building, you know, so that it's more usable.
So is the problem though that the space isn't usable up there, or there's no access?
Both, both.
Because it's a fairly big space, right?
It's a beautiful.
That big room.
No, it's good. It's a good meeting room. But yeah, access is kind of critical on that, but it's also, well, it's just the way the building is broken up.
Yeah. So I haven't had a comprehensive look and a thought about how this would work as a library, and it's there. So I think my recommendation, let's look at that building and see how that could be modified to a functioning library and have for some additional. So I'm not one of those.
I do have one question on that, sir.
Yes, sir.
The addition, how many square feet, and what are we gonna use it for?
Elevator,
Okay,
bathrooms,
just a minute.
maybe a couple, meeting rooms perhaps.
Okay, that's for here.
No, that's something up for that.
Hello, I'm not getting much of this at all. Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you. And.
I am not getting much of this discussion at all.
I'm sorry, Jerry. We're talking about the options, we're reviewing the options that have been proposed. So those additions are described here in this report. So please feel free to dig into the report, and we can certainly dig into it in greater depth. Rather than take up a lot of time at this point to go over those additions. That's what I would recommend from my personal perspective. This is my personal perspective. So, we've gone through a lot of material here. I don't know if you have any thoughts after that discussion, or you'd like to contribute those next time around. Or if you want to send me an email on it, that's fine too.
Okay.
Keith, do you have any ideas you'd like to put forward at this time?
No, sir.
Okay. Then, run through the things that I had hoped to run through for today's meeting. Anything that you guys want to talk about right now about buildings or plans for buildings?
Do you have a timeline on this? I mean, like, when you're making a decision, or when we need to,
I'm hoping that we can make a recommendation to the board from this committee on a plan for moving forward with
an option.
infrastructure for the library, the entire organization.
That would be April.
And you're also talking about
Once we have time, once we know which directions we would want to go in, yes, we would have to drive up the state. In 6 months, we're not going to be going up to bid for anything.
Right,
I
so we're
think
gonna
in 6
have
months,
a,
we want to have-
we're gonna have a focus.
We want to come together and say, this is the board, this is what we think we want to pursue in greater depth.
Okay.
And that may involve then more information gathering.
Mhm.
You know, if we say, oh, we're going to build a brand new building somewhere in Troy, we've had some public meetings about the reconstruction of this building. We probably would have to have similar sort of study to find out what that new building is, what happens in that new building, where it wants to be.
Okay.
So, this is a long process. There are short-term things we need to address, but I think
Okay, 6 months, not that long.
it's not.
No, it's not.
No, I agree. We meet once a month, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
6 meetings, right? So
right, yeah.
a lot to cover.
Can I just throw out one other, hello, can I throw out one other thought about a different location? That huge, I guess I'd call it white elephant recreation center that was built down off of, like Ida Street. It's not quite Ida Street, but the other side of the canal that the city built a long time ago. Huge.
That's blocked by Troy School.
I don't. Owns it now?
Currently doing a
Who is it?
renovation to convert. Can you hear me, Jerry?
I missed the rest of that. I missed the rest of that sentence.
Troy Schools bought that building and is currently renovating that building to be a new school.
Okay. Okay, great.
They spent $2 million in that building, remember, to buy it. I can check that, I can find out. But thank you for thinking of that, Jerry.
Okay, just a thought.
So I guess the last thing I want to bring up is, this committee has been meeting on Fridays afternoons, because of time availability by various people who are previously on the committee. Obviously, the makeup of the committee has changed somewhat. And so I want to ask, is Friday afternoon the best time to meet?
No, like, it wasn't that crazy about Friday afternoons to begin with. What is your best? Because, you're kind of the.
Thursdays are not good.
Thursdays are not good, okay.
Wednesdays are a possibility. I work full time. Sometimes means evenings and weekends. But
Me too, I work full time.
You and me both.
Yeah.
When Thursday afternoons are not good for me. Wednesday, late afternoon, a possibility, generally speaking.
When you say late afternoon?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock is not generally a good idea for me.
Okay.
Mondays, could work. Although Mondays could work.
Mondays have been notoriously bad for a while.
And there are a lot of Monday holidays too, so that probably not a very good idea for regularity.
Wednesday works for me. Better than Friday.
Well,
Yeah,
this is not the
hate
second.
Friday.
Friday,
Friday,
Friday at 4 o'clock is tough.
especially when we try to go into weekend time, like if we're here, and it's not a criticism of spending time on an important topic, but when we hit 6 o'clock,
I disagree.
and it's.
Maureen, thoughts? Wednesday, is that a possibility for you, or is that?
At 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
As long as it's not the same day.
So this is the third Friday of the month, so we move to the third Wednesday of the month, at 4 o'clock? Fourth?
Fourth? Yep.
So the fourth Wednesday?
Upper Hudson is the second Wednesday of every month.
Jerry, does that work for you?
Meeting gonna be the fourth?
I don't know, I don't think we.
I think Wednesday can work for me, yes. And you're saying the fourth Wednesday?
Fourth Wednesday of the month.
Fourth Wednesday of the month. I'd like to add a friendly amendment, sorry. I couldn't
Yes,
do
ma'am.
that. If we could possibly get an agenda a little bit earlier.
I try to.
I know you do, but that would help us kind of focus in on what we have to do.
I would love that,
And-
because then I could get some more data ready for whatever questions you have.
And if we could try to make sure we stay as close to a certain time limit for the meeting as possible.
I don't want to cut people off.
Oh, I know,
I
I
don't
know.
want to talk about
That's
it.
what I'm saying, I'm
So-
couching my words carefully, so we don't ever do that. I know there's some people say, it's an hour and we're done, and I have a problem with that.
So,
But if we could
so regarding the agenda, I think we sort of covered things ground every month, so that's gonna be the agenda. Unless something new comes up. I've got no new plans or ideas that I want to bring forward to the committee. Status of our current capital projects, so they're closed. And, our long-range planning efforts. I'm gonna share out what I've heard on refinements of these ideas. Look for any ideas that you want to bring forward, and you don't have to. You think you see something here that looks, oh yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's great. If you have something that you think, boy, we need to look at this here because it's evaluate forward. We want to hear it.
So November 24th, am I correct?
Can I just say, did we absolutely agree on the third Wednesday at 4:00?
Fourth Wednesday.
Fourth Wednesday.
Fourth.
So, is that not
Okay.
the Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
Is Wednesday.
That's probably
It is Wednesday before
not a
Thanksgiving.
great idea.
Well, it could be the fourth Friday of the month, it's the day after Thanksgiving. It's
Yeah.
gonna be less popular.
We might have to,
Thanksgiving only happens
we run
once a
into a
year.
problem.
I know, but that's
for
what I'm just saying, maybe,
November, December, and we're probably gonna, but.
but I know that we do our Thanksgiving celebration on Wednesday, so I would.
Oh,
be
the third-
there on
at least-
Wednesday.
How about third Wednesday, revisit in January?
Third Wednesday.
So are you gonna be on?
I'd asked that, I didn't get a formal notification, so.
Oh, well, it was just, no, you said one or the other, so I
Mhm.
didn't know whether you decided that you wanted to be on the.
Or both.
Well, he had indicated one or the other.
I remember TBA?
So, let's, maybe the day before Thanksgiving is probably not a great
Okay.
idea. Let's agree with that. 1, 2, 3, 4, that is 24. So, third Wednesday?
Third Wednesday,
In November.
revisit in January,
Well, I think, same thing applies to December too, so.
Right.
that's why we revisit in January.
What is the third Wednesday?
The 17th,
17,
Okay.
at 4, and then, sorry, let me do this.
and then the 15th of December.
I'm gonna have to get.
That's in January. Very good. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Can I
Thank you
vote
for your
now?
time.
We don't know what we're gonna revisit, or if we wanna go to the 4th of January?
We can always revisit.
We revisit in
We revisit
January.
every month.
We've got a meeting before that. Jerry, thank you.